Thanks for joining us for this COVID-19 Utah housing market update. There's so much to say, and everything is changing so quickly. I'm trying to take the most current stats of the day and educate you on what's going on. Hope that you can see this and hear it well. I'm at my house, like many of you may be. In fact, it seems like at least half the population is coming from their home. So today we're going to cover a few things, and I should probably introduce myself before we go forward. I'm David Pastana. I am the broker and owner of Rise Utah Realty here in Utah County. Our home base is Orem, but we service the Salt Lake County's Wasatch areas for real estate. I've been doing real estate for years, and I just wanted to share our on-the-ground experience of how the market's been affected right now. What we're seeing is, well, here, this is our outline, okay? So we're gonna do a few things here. I just wanna kind of review where we are right now in the pandemic, the coronavirus. Two, discuss how is the market. Three, what the housing market is doing to adapt to these difficult times. And, kind of discuss how much longer we think this will last and what are the ramifications if it continues to last longer. All right, so with that said here, let me go full screen on this. All right, so coronavirus epidemic recap. Here's where we are today. This started in the United States in January 12th. Today, the latest numbers are 395,511 people have the coronavirus. And as you can see, it's growing. Interesting facts is they are thinking that it will peak out sometime in this month. We all hope so that it can start the decline. Here's Utah. Utah's where we are. There's 1,846 cases in Utah, and you can see the breakdown per county. Where I am, in Utah County, there's 267 cases currently. Now, you know what, that doesn't sound like a lot because I personally do not know anybody who has the coronavirus. Now, maybe they haven't got tested, but I don't know anyone who's sick right now. So I did the numbers, and if you look at that, that means at the numbers we have, that's only 1 in 2,500 people. So if you met 2,500 people, only one would have it right now. In Salt Lake County, it's 1 in 1,800, so it's a little bit more, but it's not too bad. Social distancing has been working pretty successfully here in Utah. However, this is the CDC's website. This is where I got these numbers, and the state reporting of cases of COVID-19 is still considering that Utah is what they consider to be widespread. So I guess 1 in 2,500 people is pretty widespread according to the CDC, and has the potential of this pandemic level. I just want to remind everybody that, every night I've been watching TV, and I've been watching New York, New York and their disaster as far as them needing, their hospitals are at capacity or overrun. But none of that has actually hit Utah yet. In fact, it's pretty quiet here, but we've shut down like New York so that we don't become New York. And I understand that. And I think most people do. And so the story here is that starting in, starting at the beginning of this month, I think it was February 1st, they really initiated the social distancing in Utah. Really asked people to get that 6 feet apart, to don't go to work if you don't have to. And that's how it continued for about 2 weeks. On the 13th of March, they basically canceled schools and put school online. I know because I'm at home and I have 5 kids and they're all here. My daughter's college was canceled, and my kids' elementary, middle school, and high school were all canceled, and they're here. So that put a lot of pressure on people, and probably working from home was essential at that point because they have to take care of their kids. So we're currently in this, what they call here, stay home, stay safe directive. And we're one of a few states where this is just a directive. It's not a requirement. The requirement is like this mandate to stay in place, where we're one of few states who haven't gotten that far yet. The governor, which I've appreciated, is still allowing us to voluntarily refrain from interacting with each other. And what we can see is that it's working here in Utah with our numbers. We are looking to plateau, they said, even within this week, and then go down. That'd be great news, because that means not that many people actually got the virus. And one of the hardest things was testing, and they've done so much. Just this week, a lot of the tech companies got together of their own free will, and they developed what's called testutah.com. And it made it cooperative with the government, so that all we have to do is, if you think you got the virus, you go to testutah.com, you register yourself, you get a QR code, print that out or keep it on your cell phone, and you go to a testing site. You scan it, and they'll give you a saliva test kit. You do it yourself, you give it back to them, and then 24 hours later, you know whether you have the virus. So you self-isolate until you know that you're good. And to have tests within 24 hours and for everything to be done in Utah, that's incredible. So that one of the biggest initiatives is knowing who has it, who doesn't, be able to test them quickly, so that we don't have to sit at home for 14 days thinking that we may have it and not knowing. And so that will really help get people back to work by being able to test those who think they have it. So let's get right into it. So that's kind of where we are in the coronavirus. Let's see how we are doing in the market in general. You would think that the housing market would be fundamentally affected by this, but right here, as it says, because the fundamentals of the housing market were so good prior, we are doing pretty good. So let me review what the fundamentals are. Jobs are the key to a good housing market. So let's say before COVID happened, we had the strongest job market we've ever had, lowest unemployment. So we were doing really good. Our loans were strong. All the loans were based on good credit and solid employment. Because of those jobs, we had a strong influx of people moving to the state, and of course a high birth rate. So the demand for homes with this growing population was huge. So new construction obviously has to build like crazy to keep up with it. And obviously housing's gotten more expensive, but it's still technically considered affordable for most people who come to the state. They can still buy a property, although maybe not as big as they used to, but they can still buy a property and live here. And those things were all in our favor and pushing the housing market strong. In fact, at the end of last year, we ranked #2 in appreciation out of the whole United States. Think of that, the whole United States. We were 7.73% appreciation for 2019. Moving into the history, I wanted to show this too, because I think this is a fascinating graph. This is from the Utah MLS, the Wasatch Front Regional MLS, which is utahrealestate.com. And on the left here, we have 1996 is when the MLS became digital, and you can see how home prices have gone up. The green dollar amounts are actually in the thousands. So a 5 would mean $5,000. That's how much homes appreciated in that year. And a red dollar amount would show a negative. So out of a 23-year history, we've had 2 sections where home prices have gone down. 2001, that was the dot-com stock market crash with all the tech companies. And then we all are familiar with the 2008 crash, Great Recession, caused by fraudulent lending and bad loans and all those things. And that definitely became the deepest recession that we've had, since the 1920s, they say. But since the trough, which tipped in 2011 into 2012, we've had like 8 to 9 years here of solid appreciation and a very strong market with good loans. So we were entering into 2020 with this in mind. And I think most people were asking, like, when is this going to end? Is it all done? Is it, it's bound to crash, but yet it kept going. And so that's kind of how we were entering 2020. And this here just shows the forecast that in spite of all that, we were still forecasted to appreciate 4.7% for the state of Utah. So a pretty solid increase in spite of everything that's going on, or what was going on prior to COVID-19. But I want to share a little story because right here that I personally had. So going into November, we were helping people buy investment properties, and we found this place on the lakefront at Vineyard Town Center, one of my favorite townhome complexes. You should definitely call me about it because it's still a good deal. Back then, I can get a townhome for $298,000. That's the base price because you'd have to do some upgrades. But let's just talk about base price. Well, over a 4-month period till really end of February, the home prices went up substantially. In fact, they went up $24,000 in that time, which is an 8% increase in like 4 months. I mean, that's insane. If I was trying to help people buy homes, and sometime in like January, like we could get some deals in November and December. Sometime in January, like the market like flipped a switch and just went berserk. And all of a sudden, what was selling at a pretty good rate just went crazy. And all of a sudden there was multiple offers on everything. And so we would, let's say in this community, they would release 6 new units. In that same day, everything would sell and sell for over asking price. And because of that, they would then release the next phase, and it would go up $6,000. And that didn't slow down. So it all sold in the same day with above asking price. So they said, what the heck, let's raise the price again. They raised it $8,000, and it all sold again. And we were in this phase up until the time coronavirus hit. Well, so we were seeing just an insane, and I thought this may have been just this project because it's been popular, but I checked with other builders that I was working with and the Point of the Mountain, and they all had the same thing. Again, we bought a house with a client, and we went under contract for new construction. Let me clarify, in December, and then by February there was a 6-month waiting list. 6 months. So I went from no waiting list to a 6-month waiting list in like 3 months, and that's kind of where we were in the market. And so we were thinking, wow, this is going to be a crazy year, much more aggressive than we ever thought. And so what happened here? Well, coronavirus hit, right? Coronavirus hit, and a lot has changed since then. So let's see how it's changed. Probably the number one way in which it's affected housing is shown in this graph. It's showing that we have social distancing in place. Okay, so this is the impact. This is from Showing Time. Showing Time is a service that realtors on our MLS use to schedule showings for listings among each other. The 0 on the left is kind of our baseline of showings for the month, for the beginning of the year, which is typically our slow time of the year. Okay, and let me say that this is for all of North America. So this is for the entire United States, okay? The orange is this year, and the black line is 2019. So if you look at the dates, right around the time, right around March 11th, you see the graph just, man, it just drops off here. And so from January, which is typically a slower time, it's about 45-50% less showings now than before, as of the beginning of the year. And the beginning of the year is slower. So that's a big impact as far as showings, definitely feeling it. Let me show you another one, which is for Utah. So this is Utah, a little more bumpy of a line, but again, starting at the beginning of January, that's our baseline, which is typically slower, but right in January, we typically will see an increase in showing activity as we get into the spring crazy season, right? Into summer, and then it peaks typically June, July, and then it will slightly go down from that point. So we can see right around, it says March 11th, 13th. 13th is when, again, all the schools closed and you're told to go home and work from home. So we've been working from home for almost a month now. And in that month, you can see that we're all watching TV. We're all freaking out over like everything that's happening in New York. And we're thinking that what's happening in New York is happening here, but it's not. You go outside, you're like, wow, it's actually a really nice day. Although it had been rainy and pretty stormy before, but it's beautiful now. So I think everybody's kind of in that frozen section where they don't know what to do. And we had someone under contract on like the day or two before, and they were buying a $610,000 house, and they canceled. They backed out because this guy owns he's self-employed and he owns 3 Big O tire stores, and he had no idea how it was going to affect his business. And so he backed out, and for that reason. And I think there's several people that have backed out overall because of this unknown. I know I was talking to other people about investments, and we had an appointment, but that was canceled because they just wanted to see how the next 2-3 weeks went before they decided how to move forward. So in the beginning of a crisis, there is this a month or so where we're frozen, where we're like, hey, what's going on here? And we really don't know what direction to move in, so we don't move at all. And that indecisiveness will make indecision, and we'll just stay where we are, what we're, at least we know is comfortable. But if you know you got a job and you know you're going to have that job in the future, you're more likely to move forward. But again, you don't want to overpay for housing in this situation. So if it is going down, you're probably going to want to wait. So we're definitely slower. But if you look at our point where we are right now, we're like 10% slower than Christmas time. So, and we still sell homes, and prices were still going up at Christmas time. So we have slowed down, but it's not too crazy. So let me show you some more numbers that. So if you love numbers, stay with me. If you don't love numbers, just stick with me. I'll try and explain and get through this quickly. But the black line here is 2020, and the yellow line is 2019. So this is the number of active listings on our MLS per day, how they fluctuate, and you can see that we're roughly what is that, 700, 800 listings difference. So we're a little less on the listing side. So there's less active listings, which would tell me that there are some people who are voluntarily withdrawing from the market until they know the direction. A lot of these people are what we call the voluntary sales. Like they don't have to move, so they can wait, which then make up that percentage right there. So let's look at the average number of active residential listings per day compared to previous years and how they've changed over months, okay? So this is kind of that same number. And if you look in February, we're this black line here on the left. Again, we don't have the full year, but compared to other years, we're definitely lower, but not too much lower than comparing to 2018, we're right about where 2018 was. 2019 was definitely a higher year, and the highest year was 2016. There you go. So nothing terribly alarming, but we're definitely a little slower. Days under contract, number of under contract listings. Now this one is much tighter here. So we may have fewer listings coming up, but the ones that are going under contract are pretty close to what we normally would see. So we're seeing almost just as many homes under contract as we did last year. And so as of April 7th, it's within 100 homes of each other right there. Oh, I thought this one was interesting. When you compare month to month to other years, if you actually look at, okay, so we're the black line going up from so on the bottom is January, February, March, and then on the left going from bottom to top is the number of under contracted listings. We're actually ahead on under contracts right now than we were in any previous 4 years. Okay, so we're definitely, although there's fewer listings, we're actually more people are under contract. Why is that? Because they're the serious buyers. I mean, if you're buying during an epidemic, that means you got to buy. It means you're not scared. You have your job, you're good, and you're confident, and you have to move. So you're taking action, and it's pretty interesting how fast, how not only that we're doing good, but we're doing better than previous years. So sales again, where we are is pretty much on track for the last 4 years, right there in the middle. This is now actual closings per month. As this continues, we'll see, but right now it hasn't been affected. So what how do we interpret that? So what it means is that as the coronavirus and the fear of the coronavirus got out, and this pandemic, fear of it spreading in Utah, what it shows me is that people, in spite of all that, they went forward with the close of their sale. You typically have financing and all these other things, that reasons where you could have backed out, but they didn't. So it means that they closed, and I like that. I like that as a sign that they still have confidence in the market. All right, next slide. All right, this is where we can geek out as of February. You can see that February, when we entered, was just killing it. So we were just, okay, starting from the top, new listings was just 2% under the previous year. Pending sales, though, was up 10%. That means under contract. Closed sales, we were up 8.3%. Median sales price, we were up 9.5% from the year before. Average sales price, 7.2%. And days on market, so at that point had been unchanged. Inventory was, this is where we saw that listings were down, but the sales and everything were up. But because sales are up and supply is down, is causing a problem. Okay, because when supply goes down and number of sales go up, the amount of homes available shrink dramatically, and that affects price, because your inventory is measured in how many months it takes you to sell inventory. So if you're 2 months, around 2 months and under, that's like as hot of a market as you can get. You're going to appreciate at least 10% in a year if you're at that. An average inventory amount is 6 months. That means in a normal, what we'd say a normal market would be, if no new homes went on the market, it would take 6 months to sell all homes, and then you'd be out of inventory. 2 months means if no new homes went on the market, in 2 months, it'd be sold. And we're at 2.1 as of February. All right, so again, all these new listings, very similar. Closed sales were ahead, median sales, this is just graphed out. Same thing as what I just said. And median price, again, we're on the up and up of everything. And this has all been good. So what I want to get to is, because the fundamentals were so good, we're not anticipating that if a recession occurs because of this COVID epidemic, we're not anticipating, from everything that I can read, that it would affect housing. And let me go back in history. So what this graph shows you is home prices changed during the last 5 recessions. Okay, you can see in 1980s, they showed 2 recessions, and 1 in each year. And in that time, the green represents that home prices went up, and it's 6.1%. During a recession, they went up. 1981, there was a recession, and yet home prices went up 3.5% during that recession. Now, 1991, the recession was caused by like a savings and loans banking issue, and it affected housing, because banking obviously is directly affecting housing, because you have to get a loan in order to buy a house. Well, 2001, we saw that was the .com time, technology boom, where everyone wanted to buy a website, and that exploded. But during that that recession, house prices went up 6.6%. The unfortunate thing is, the next recession was caused by the banking industry and the housing market, by really having bad loans and selling those loans to the stock market, which kind of just tumbled and created a national disaster as far as financially. And because it was so central to housing, which is financing, you couldn't get a loan for a while unless you had incredible credit. And that's why it affected housing price the most, because it was fake, and it, what is it called? Bubble. It increased it too quickly. And here, because that bubble popped, it dropped fast. And now really, if you're under 35, that's the only recession you ever known about. You haven't lived through anything else. So it's foreign to you to know that. And most people conclude that every recession is like the last one, and the whole housing market's going to explode, and housing's going to lose their value, and you're going to get these 50% off deals everywhere, and you're going to flip it, and you're going to make $100,000 deal. I mean, I think that's pretty much what we've been trained to do through HGTV and all those flip shows and these great deals. But the market has changed. That was 10 years ago, and maybe for about 7 years that was pretty good, and it's dried up. So this recession is more akin to, or I said this recession, it's not even a recession yet, but a recession, by the way, is when we have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Okay. So the GDP, the gross domestic product, so goods and services sold, if it reduces for at least a quarter, so it's not just 1 month and then it goes back up. Although that month felt like a recession is technically, the technical version would be a 3-month period. And so it has to, not just 3 months, it has to be a 6-month period to call it a recession. Otherwise, it's just like a blip. So what we don't know is, are we just going to see a blip, like where we have 1-2 months and we're good, and so it's technically will never be called a recession? Or will its effects last longer and be harder to get out of this? When they open up everything, will be harder to get out because of the consequences of that. Well, we don't know. Honestly, we don't know. But I think that's where the fear is, depending on and how you feel about this pandemic and virus. So, but nonetheless, it hasn't directly affected housing. Everybody I talk to still feels fairly good about housing. If they're on the fence, it's only because they're unsure about their current situation. They're not worried about housing. They're just worried about their current situation. And if they are worried about housing, they just don't want to overpay if it is going down in price. And what we can see is it's actually not going down in price. It's actually going up in price still, maybe not at the same pace, but it's still going up in price. And if you buy something, you're probably not going to overpay. Well, let me give an example. So in that other housing community, they were selling out in a day. Well, they're still selling out, but it's taking a week now. So, that's normal. And in fact, I like that better. So they're not having to jack the price up $8,000 every new release. They'll just maybe bump it up $1,000. So not much. So I think that's better. And it will give us an opportunity for a better bargain, because now we can maybe negotiate some upgrades for free for you. And that's where I see, or we don't have to pay over asking, which just a month ago, I had someone pay $25,000 over asking for one of those. So by not having to pay over asking, and by just paying the asking price and getting some incentives for free, that's where you're going to get the good deal. We're not at that point where you're going to get huge discounts. We're just not there. So why isn't the housing market more affected? It comes into this question of how's the housing market adapting. And so let me just say that we really can do so many things virtually in housing. Thank goodness for technology. Man, it's been awesome. Technology is blessing us that we can continue to do real estate, and we're doing it remotely. So here I am at my house, right? Okay, so let me just kind of run through. So we don't have to meet you, man. You just call me. We can talk over the computer. We can assess your needs. I can send you. All these listings are virtual. I can set things up and send them to you. And home tours. You know, if they don't have a virtual tour, like what we do when we have a listing is we have a Matterport camera, which is a 3D camper, and it maps out your whole house. And really, you know, showing homes right now is more like not just for like seeing homes. It's like this, what we call decision showings. You're going because you've looked at so many, you've been a lot more careful at looking at them. And so you're just going to check it out. And when we go, I did a whole video on this on my YouTube. You should go back and look at it because, you know, as a buyer or seller, oh, let's talk about the buyer. Buyer, don't touch anything. You can wear a mask, and we got Purell to clean your hands before and after. So you don't have to touch anything. As a realtor, I'll use one hand to touch it, but the sellers are encouraged to leave everything open so you don't necessarily have to open any doors. I'll just unlock the front door. You come in, don't touch anything, you leave, you're good. You know, if you don't feel comfortable with that, or if you're at an age where you're worried about your susceptibility, I can go through with my cell phone and we can do a video tour, and I'll just send it to you. And so those things are very successful in this market. And you also have home inspectors that can send you your electronic reports, so you don't have to enter the property. I think at some point you would want to, but you can do it under very controlled circumstances and without too much worry. And everything, you know, when we put offers on, everything's electronic. We use DocuSign or .loop. Those are very popular formats. We can accept your deposit mobilely. And like I said, the inspections are delivered electronically. Again, you don't have to come and touch people. And you know, as far as signing, they can come to your house wearing a mask and gloves, or you could come into the office and they'd have everything wiped down. So the banks do require that you physically sign these documents. So if you feel comfortable, they can do it at your home. So these things are how the real estate industry is adapted to make real estate better for everybody. So I think right now, in recap, what we're seeing is that the housing market is doing well. Showings have definitely decreased, but overall, people weren't too scared in the beginning. I think what happens then is this question: how much longer can the housing market last if this continues? And if it does continue, I think that's where we're going to see larger impacts. So they passed this, $2.3 trillion coronavirus relief package, and that was amazing. And it's really going to help a lot of these restaurants and small businesses to get money that they need. You know, they're mailing out checks to people. The question is really when we get those, because everyone's mortgages are due and they may not have made much money in March. And so our April mortgages are due, rents are due, and that's concerning. So hopefully those things get out there, but there is mortgage forgiveness they've talked about, and other things. I don't want to go too deep into this because I probably don't have all my notes here to really talk on it, but the government did this package with the idea that we may be isolated for 1 to 2 months. And in that time, they didn't want businesses going out of business. So they wanted to encourage them to keep people on payroll. The SBA loans are specific to payroll and keeping people employed, so that when these restrictions lift, you'll have a business to go back to. Because what would suck is you don't have a business to go back to because it's gone under. I'm more concerned about restaurants, but I haven't cut my hair, and I'm kind of like 3 weeks overdue for a haircut because I can't go get it cut right now. You know, a lot of those people I'm concerned about, and in that way. And so this is the number, because these relief packages are specific to unemployed. You're seeing this huge, massive surge in people applying for unemployment because there's basically free money out there, increased benefits for people for this time of need. In fact, I heard that there was in the state of Utah, more people applied for unemployment benefits last week than they did the entire year of 2019. Think about that. In 1 week versus last year. But that's because we have the stimulus, and basically they're saying there's money there for you, and they may be temporarily unemployed or permanently unemployed, I don't know, but they're not getting money, and so they're applying for this, and that'll help in the short term. Okay, so here's the date, April 30th. We got to see what happens April 30th, because that's pretty much where federal government said, look, we're basically quarantined. We're encouraging the states to quarantine until that date. We'll see if Utah goes that long. We'll see, in the next 3 weeks, we'll see if it's getting better or worse. The idea is that it's going to get better. And after that point, there's a couple thoughts, and I got some thoughts from Dave Ramsey. A lot of people like Dave Ramsey. But I think what he said was spot on. And I was actually already talking about this before. Maybe he just validated my feelings. But he said basically the government won't, and basically I took a picture of this. This is on his YouTube channel. You can go watch it here. There's the title. But it's basically the government won't be able to hold back people from working more or from home or not working for more than a month. Like, it's just not going to happen. The economic cost is just too big. What he said was just eye-opening. He says, for every one person who has the coronavirus, there's 100,000 people who have lost their jobs. And currently the coronavirus hasn't been any more deadly than the normal flu. So in the end, we're going to have to evaluate all this and make a call. I'm not going to be the one who makes those decisions, but I do feel that if you are more susceptible, you can elect to stay home, but don't force everyone else to stay home. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And I feel like after a month of staying home, like I can feel that growing among people that I talk to as well. So I think there's going to be a whole lot of pressure to go to work, to lift these restrictions and open up commerce a little bit. And within reason, I think we can still social distance and do well there on our own. So if this really goes out 3 months and we can't work for 3 months, I think it's going to have to be really, really bad. It's going to have to be a bad disaster for that to happen. And if it is that bad for the coronavirus, it's really going to be bad for our economy. And I think at that point, everything's, it's not just about housing, because unemployment will be very high. It'll be more, it'll be definitely a recession at that point. So we hope it doesn't get there. See here, I got someone text me. Oh, it wasn't about this. So I hope that helps, but at this point, honestly, I'll tell you personally, I am buying 2 investment properties this month, and I had to think long and hard about it. And after just looking at everything, I'm like, oh, well, it's still good. And so I had a friend who's buying, a client who's buying right next to me in closing. He's already got his place. It's an investment. He's already got it listed, rented out. He's already got a signed lease, and it closes in a month from now. So he just proved that, the demand is still there, and there are people who still can pay for these things. And so, I think right now you're going to get maybe some people take advantage of some people who are less optimistic and are willing to drop the price. Going back a little bit, the one I told you was buying a $610,000 home. That home has dropped in price $10,000. And I wouldn't doubt that if we made an offer, we could probably get them to pay closing costs a little bit too. So take advantage of those people that have to move, and, and if their agent isn't as confident in counseling them, I think that's where you can take advantage instead of having to pay over asking price. Because before, man, it was pretty much the price. Absolutely refused to give any closing cost, and there were other offers, so you had to pay that. So now it's softened a little bit, but the market is still there. We're still selling, and it's looking good so far. So here's the predictions. I'm not really licensed to predict anything, but I'll just tell you my opinions. Social distancing is working, and social distancing will loosen up. That's my prediction starting in May. I just think there's going to be too much pressure. Unless the virus is like really, really bad, we're going to want to open up. Real estate may soften a little bit, but it's going to quickly accelerate. Don't expect any huge deals. People cannot put up with another month of unemployment. And I don't think the government can afford to pay us again. If it continues, unemployment, or they're forcing us without good reason, the cure is worse than the problem. So we're going to cause, I think, more destruction than anything else. I mean, suicide rates, divorces, I don't know. people are going to get tired of each other. So, hey, last thing is, there's churches are pushing for relief, and this Friday is Good Friday. It's going to be a national day of prayer. And I do believe that there are powers greater than us to help solve the problems that we face. So go in with this, practically, but also, pray for relief, pray for our economy, pray for people in power that they can make good decisions. And so there's this initiative out by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints calling upon all churches and people, faiths, denominations, anybody to go forward and do a national day of prayer. That's what I would recommend. And we hope that this will be lifted and that things get back to normal and the economy is strengthened. So that's all I have for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and share this with your friends if you have people questioning what's going on, and we'll give more updates as it continues. But thank you so much for watching today. And I'm going to stop sharing. Here I am. Hey, appreciate you guys. So thank you so much.